Back in 2018, after a fast-paced working day driving all over Los Angeles, I finally approached my driveway. As I drove through, a cat suddenly sprinted from the bushes on the right towards another on the left. I had to brake, convinced that I will see my car hit an unexpected speed bump. The cat was somewhere between a charcoal gray and black, and its sudden appearance woke me up. Feeling my chest thump, I finally parked next to my place. I have heard from the neighbors how cats have been encroaching in their backyards. One even told me that a cat gave birth to a litter in her backyard. She even invited me to see her backyard just to show me the small hole where the cats often transit through. I could not help noticing the vast number of weeds and plants that had long overtaken the yard. No wonder cats prefer going there. I could have hidden away myself. My backyard, however, was the exact opposite, where there was nowhere to hide. In the years before 2020, there was little to no use for the backyard. My family and I were always in and out of the house, and, coupled with the full greenery weeds greeting us every day, the backyard was abandoned. Yet, the safer at home order turned the following days, weeks, and months into identical days. The pandemic pushed me into deciding to clean up my own backyard. I bought a pair of heavy-duty gloves and started pulling the pesky weeds. After the cleanup, I discovered a wildlife there, from spiders, mosquitoes, a mouse, a small lizard, and a frog. I had quite the collection, and all that was missing was that charcoal cat. With the encroaching nature pushed away, the backyard became a bigger place. I placed 2 chairs along the fence that borders my neighbor's backyard on the other side. I took a moment to sit down and just take in the view of the now visible fence wall and door on the opposite side of the patio. I forgot about the door that leads to an outside yard and a trash dumpster shared by 5 other townhouse tenants. In the summer of 2020, with the increased presence of my family and I in the backyard, I used that fence door to exit. One day, I decided to open my backyard door that leads to the trash dumpster near my driveway. And as I opened it, I saw that same charcoal cat perched up on the wall opposite of me. He was there seemingly waiting for me as he just stared. I looked behind me thinking the cat was looking at something else. Nope, he was looking directly at me. I just stared back, and after an extended moment locked in the staring match to see who would blink first, I just walked towards the dumpster. As I made my way back, the stoic cat kept looking at me. Was he upset that I almost made him into a feline carpet? I closed the door and peeked between the wood panels. He was unmoving in his deep stare. He didn't appear to fear me at all, and nor should he. As a 6-year-old boy, I always wanted to have a pet. I remember doing very well at school, hoping my mom would reward me with a cat or a dog. When asking her directly, she would always say those same words, "We will see." While officially never owning a pet, I did become friends with a stray cat. Since my younger brothers were too small to go out and play outside, I would often go outside by myself. I found him in my backyard. I approached him from behind and startled him. The typical frightening cat would scatter off into the bushes. Not this cat. He tried for a second to run off, but his left leg betrayed him. He was a young cat with almost perfect blend of brown and black fur on his body. I mention almost because he had shades of pink and red on one side of his leg. He almost dragged that leg along wherever he went. There were ants, both dead and alive, crawling near his wound. After surveying his leg, I slowly raised my hand over his head. Sideways glance and all, he lunged at my hand to bite it. Only he didn't bite it. I didn't flinch either. My smile was unwavering as he slowly allowed my hand to stroke the back of his head. My mom found me petting the cat and almost shrieked. I quickly looked up at her and noticed my eyes water up. After a brief pause, she walked away without saying a word. The cat eventually kept his eyes closed as I moved my hand over his body. Mom came back with a bowl of milk and handed it to me. I placed it in front of him and he lunged at it and began dipping his tongue on it. His whiskers glistened white throughout. After a while, the cat will slowly retreat to wherever he came from. I never wanted a pet more than at this moment. I wanted to bring him into my house and give him a bath. He certainly needed a bath. But more than that, the cat needed some medical attention. I didn't want to imagine how it came to be that way. Whatever the case might have been, he knew he had found a friend in me. The cat and I had this routine where he would show up in my backyard in the afternoon. I would serve him milk every time. I would thoroughly wash my hands beforehand. And in my naive attempt, I wanted to clean him with them. That leg would not get better. It seemed to get heavier and heavier for him. This went on for weeks. One day, as I was walking home from school, I thought about my cat and was looking forward to hearing his meows. I waited and waited in the backyard. He didn't show up. After hours of waiting, I just left the milk and hoped he would make his way back to have the meal. I came back the following morning and found the milk untouched, save for the ants that drowned while attempting to feast on it. I waited for the injured cat to come back every day after that. He never reemerged. Mom came over and lightly patted me on my shoulder and sighed. She didn't have to say anything. I hoped he would find a better place to be at, and maybe finding a home. Injured and all, I still wanted him to come back. Over 30 years later, after believing that I didn't do enough to save him, I was convinced that the cat appreciated the attention and care that I provided. I recall how after a while the cat would always move off towards the gate. Once or twice he would look back at me as though he was reassuring me that I did what I could to help. To this day, I still haven't owned any pets. I certainly hope that this cat, who was seconds away from suffering a catastrophic injury, will perhaps visit my backyard. We may even break bread by serving him milk. I will always be partial to cats, for they are independent and will try to do it all themselves. Yet, anyone, including cats, would appreciate assistance of any kind from time to time. During the 80s, my mom, who had a lot of friends, liked to celebrate and have house parties. It was my mom's turn to host our modest house containing a small living room, a small kitchen, a small bedroom, and a small bathroom. The only advantage of having the party here was the large space in front of the house that led to an even bigger backyard. At the time, I was 6 or 7 years old. I was bored out of my mind with the music booming. Through the abundance of MacLeod beer bottles and KFC chicken tubs, Mom still managed to cook something for my brothers and I. White rice, pinto beans, steak strips, and fried plantains. I was watching one of those old war films on TV. I think it starred Clark Gable as the lead actor. A good friend of my mom gave me a bag of M&Ms, and that of course gave me great joy. With my brothers now asleep in the lone bedroom, I went outside to enjoy the wispy cold air. I stood near the porch of our neighbor's house. The darkness of that house contrasted with the beaming lights coming out of mine. A figure emerged from the porch behind me. My neighbor Susan came over to me with a wide smile on her face. Her green eyes always managed to mesmerize me. I think she always knew that. I offered her some of my M&Ms. After a while, she asked me if I wanted to go somewhere a little quieter. I, tired of the music and lights, agreed and followed her to the center patio, which was almost embedded in darkness. The only part of that patio that remained visible was the white refrigerator, which was tucked against a corner of another neighboring house. Susan headed towards that refrigerator. We went in front of it, which was facing the house wall. She suddenly opened the door, causing for us to be completely protected from any prying eyes. Susan looked at me with those enchanting green eyes. "Want me to show you something?" she whispered. Before I could say anything, she kissed me. The kiss seemed to last a long time, tongue and all. It was a brand new experience for me. Afterwards, she closed the refrigerator door and retreated to her house. "I hope you liked it," she whispered before disappearing. I was left wanting more. I guess biology started to kick in. She was 15. I peered into the metallic black door, and the inner wood door was still open. I called her name several times and hoped she would come out again. But she never did. During the following months, I would infrequently see Susan, mostly when she would go to school in the mornings. I recall rushing back from school hoping to catch her return. However, I would never see her coming back during the daytime. I suppose she would come back at night. Her mom, her aunt, and 2 little brothers lived there. Paying a little bit more attention, I would notice random men and women arriving and leaving the house next door. They all had something in common. They wore dark jeans and either white t-shirts or tank tops. Most of the time, they would also have dark hoodies. Years later, I would discover that Susan's mom and aunt were in a gang. All the unsavory activities would catch up to them as they were forced to move 1 year later. I would only see Susan a handful of times since. Eventually, my family and I ended up moving into that bigger house. Over 5 years passed. There were loud knocks on the metal door at night. I happened to be in the living room watching TV. I decided to peek from the curtains next to the door. I saw Susan and a friend of hers. Both had dark jeans and white tank tops, along with hoodies. Susan wore dark lipstick and heavy makeup that made her unrecognizable from the night we kissed. I told Mom that it was Susan and a friend. She went ahead and opened the door. As they came inside, I stood next to Mom hoping Susan would say hi to me. But she never acknowledged me. "Hi, I'm sorry for coming here so late. Can we use your bathroom for a bit?" My mom looked a bit put off by the request, but still ended up letting them through. I didn't know what they were doing, but they were in the bathroom for a long time. After an hour, they both rushed out into the living room, opened the door, and disappeared into the night. A year later, Susan would go on to have a baby boy. Another year would go by and my mom sat down on the couch next to me and gave me the news. "I'm sorry, but Susan has died." It turned out that one night Susan was on a payphone and was spotted by a rival gang. Shortly after finishing a phone call to her mom where she asked how her baby was doing, Susan was summarily shot multiple times. Throughout the years, I always thought of the ways that I could have helped her out. How things would have been different if she had come back outside that night. I hope she now has the peace she was denied in life. I grew up as a middle child. I had 2 siblings way older than me, as well as 2 that were way younger than me. I grew up on a road that was a community inside of a community. Everyone on this road had at least 2 generations, if not more. My family has 4 generations of history on this property. I grew up lonely because I was too young to run with the older kids and too old to sit and play blocks with the little kids. The neighborhood kids were the same way. There was only one boy that was my age. but he's a different story for another day. When I was 6 or 7, I had a memory of playing in the woods out back with an older man. There was an old shed back in the woods a little way from my house, and that's where I'd meet him. We would sit and talk, and since I didn't have anyone else who wanted to play with me, this man was appealing. Like I said, he was older, so he looked like a hard worker wearing farm clothes, which were always dirty. We'd talk and play games, and then he'd tell me that I'd better go back to my mama, and he'd walk with me to the edge of the woods. And then he'd turn around and take a few steps. By the time I turned around, he'd always be gone. This continued for about a year, and then I became old enough for school and had friends, so I forgot about my friend in the woods. When I was 15, my mom and I were going through some pictures. We got to a picture where there was the man, the one I played with years ago. I asked my mother who he was, and he was my great-grandfather's farmhand. I asked how that was since I remember him from my childhood. I wasn't about to admit I spent time with him in the woods when I wasn't supposed to go near them. I also remember the fact that Paul, my great-grandfather, died 18 years before I was born. My mother got this weird look on her face and told me, "No, you didn't know him because he died long before your grandmother was born. In fact, he died young after an accident in the field. When Paul was baling hay, the man got caught in the baler and was pulled through. He died in a nearby old house a couple of hours later." I was sure that the man in the picture was the man I played with. Later, I went back to find the shed to convince myself that I wasn't crazy. I found it and went inside. It looked like a regular shed left exactly how it was when I last been there. So, I ran to get Mom to show her the shed, but when I led her there, nothing. To this day, I still haven't been able to find the shed where the older man lived in. I am very convinced that I talked and played with the man that died almost 100 years before I was born. Despite being a little creeped out, I was very lonely back then, and I am very grateful that he returned to keep me company.